Take. I'm your host, AJ Kierstead, NewEnglandTake.com to get the episodes as a Substack in your email. Be sure to check that out. Also on YouTube and every podcast platform out there. Please be sure to like and subscribe. Big thank you to WKXL, who picks up the show every week on Saturday at 8:30 a.m., leading into Facing the Future. And big thank you also to GraniteGrock.com, picks up the show Saturday nights, and Concord TV. You can check out the program over there, my community TV station. AJ at NewEnglandTake.com if you have any opinions on what we're doing here and what did I get wrong, what did I get right, you want to be a guest on the show, please hit me up. We try and have conversations here at both sides of the aisle, but this ain't one of those conversation episodes. This is me talking to the void. Hopefully you listen and pay attention. This week's episode is brought to you by Porcupine Coffee Roasting, a great way to get coffee roasted right here in the Granite State. This private membership organization focuses on small batch specialty coffee. This month I received their Java roast. Grind it up at home. I've got the whole bean. You can get it pre-ground if you want, and it's fantastic. The flavors, the notes that are on the packages are very correct with what you're going to get. I loved it, so be sure to check it out and visit porcupinecoffeeroasting.com and use code NETAKE for 15% off your order. Link down in the description. All right, so we got to start off. With the Epstein situation. There's no way I can't talk about it. I've been called into the WDEV or the Vermont Viewpoint to talk about it. We've kind of talked about it a little bit here on the program, but this latest release of more than 3 million documents has had pretty substantial impact. Even here in the Granite State, it's even received some headlines with old Dean Kamen, our local, one of our local rich guys here in the state, was kicked out, or is on leave, I guess you say, from FIRST, which is a robotics organization for youth that he's on the board of, and I believe he founded it, or at least he's an essential part of that operation. And there's a lot of pictures of him and old Jeffy Epstein on the beach, and the emails going back and forth arranging for this. And it's not a good look for a youth organization to have someone of that nature on the roster. So he's going to be out from there for a while. It's raising all sorts of questions about Army. Stephanie Shaheen, who is running for Congress, I want to say, here in New Hampshire, is having to catch some flack because she was on the payroll of Army, which is Dean Kamen's organization for research, kind of creating artificial organs and things like that. It's one of the big things they do, but it's a lot of experimental research in healthcare technology. It's a fascinating company, unfortunately tied to a guy that is on the Epstein list. So that is not a good look and is going to be an issue going forward. I will say, if you actually want to go through and read a lot of the emails, I wasn't sure if this was real at first, but CoffeeZilla was even sharing it. So if you go to jmail.world, so that's jmail.world, someone literally created a Gmail clone with all the pictures, emails, a sweet list on the side where you can find anyone from Bill Gates to Noam Chomsky right there and see the conversations that these guys were having. And it's terrifying. It's straight up terrifying. The QAnon meme about Pizzagate and all the horrors of people doing really inappropriate things, whether it's abusive, whether it's with underage people, just leave it at that because we are on the radio and TV. It's atrocious and disgusting and disturbing, and anyone that has direct ties to anything that was going on, they should be kicked out. If they were calling this out back in the day, Brett Weinstein back in the day was calling it out, saying he had one visit with him and it just didn't feel right. These guys, like, Epstein was his whole thing. We all just kind of, the meme around has been set up around the abuse of young people and the blackmail part of it. But Epstein got popular with these rich elites because he was a power broker. He was the guy who could connect you to such and such. He can connect Bill Gates to some government in Africa. If you need to move weapons from one place to another, he's the guy to go to. If you want to have some of the most debaucherous experience of your life on his private island, Little St. James, you go talk to him and he'll hook you up. Unfortunately, he's probably going to save every single email he ever had with you. He had this unique way, this very boomery way of keeping records. So we always talk about Epstein's book is the thing we need to find. No, Epstein's book was his email account, because he literally would email himself notes of conversations he would have with people or things he needed to go back and deal with in some fashion. His black book that we have been looking for is here now. We have it. They did not do a great job with a lot of the redactions one way or another. Whether they should have or shouldn't in different areas is definitely an issue, all of this. The pictures, which are also listed on jmail.world, there's a lot of inconsistencies when it comes to it, but it's not good. There are serious issues. The reason I was bringing up Pizzagate before was literally conversations about moving people, human trafficking, by using pizzas as the metaphor for it. So that was their code talk, was using pizza, which has now led to a lot of people, rightfully, now considering there's all these videos online of these Hollywood characters talking about how much they love pizza and passing out pizza at award ceremonies and things like that, and it makes you scratch your head going, is this really just pizza? Is this kind of like an inside thing for these elites? Because coming out of Me Too and all the issues that was uncovered in Hollywood, it was a legitimate issue. The original origins of Me Too were legit. It devolved. It became this huge culture war fight, but the original issue of the abuse of the studios and people with money and power were real. The whole Diddy situation, things of that nature. The abuse of that people in power were imparting on either each other or those that they viewed below them was tremendous, and something we can't just let go. Bill Gates should not, his whole foundation should just totally remove him from it. Any association, when you look at Steve Bannon, who I personally have always viewed as, he's a hired gun, he's in it for power and money. It's the only thing, more power, I think, than money even. Like, he just wanted to be in the room. Peter Attia, who has caught a lot of headlines this past week with it, was hired by CBS News under Barry Weiss and was going to be doing things, and he was all over the place partying. He was blowing off the birth of his child to go party with Jeff Epstein at whatever horrible thing they were doing. It's insane. It makes you think, like, am I crazy? Is this real? I highly suggest, there's something to also consider on the other side of this. Be careful, because the files also include a lot of just tip line. The FBI tip line tips ended up in the files, which had all sorts of stuff about just horrific things I don't even want to bring up here in this platform. You need to be careful what you're looking at and who's giving it away. Flesh Simulator did a good job. He's a YouTuber and on various platforms. He's crazy. I love following his channels. Flesh Simulator did a video talking about the tip line aspect of it. So if you want some ideas of, like, what are some of the stuff that probably aren't real that are in here, the baby abuse stuff that was blatant. I think we're more on the tip lines, for example, but a lot of this other stuff is real, and it's a problem. Breaking Points did a lot of great coverage this past week on it. If you follow them, like any of the legitimate news sources, if they're not covering it, then you need to not view them as legitimate anymore. We need to pay attention to this, because this is going to have tremendous ramifications going forward. And if it doesn't have tremendous ramifications, make sure you know who you're voting for. Because if they are not taking this seriously, Ro Khanna, I've got big issues with him from policy perspective. I'm so happy partnering up with Thomas Massie to make this happen, because we needed this to happen, because we need accountability for these slime balls that are, once again, like Bill Gates, who literally caught an STD from a Russian hooker and gave the STD to his wife and was trying to quietly get, allegedly, antibiotics into his wife's system without her knowledge in order to make sure she wouldn't find out what he was up to. Wonder why they're divorced. It's not good. All right, let's move on to the next thing here. I got to talk about the vehicle inspection situation here in New Hampshire, because it is bonkers. So we were supposed to be the end of January, I'm pretty sure it was, the State House, a law was actually passed and signed by the governor. State car inspections were going to be done. That was supposed to be it. We're going to be not dealing with that anymore. We were going to just cut ties. It really bothered the New Hampshire Automobile Dealers Association, auto shops, and everything like that because they want that money on a consistent basis, but that's gone. But there was a lawsuit by the emissions vendor. So the vendor that is responsible for the equipment, it's Gordon Darby is the organization, and went to federal courts, and they got a hold on the law from going into effect. There was an emergency meeting of the New Hampshire Governor and Executive Council on Wednesday, February 4th, and I'm recording this on February 5th in the evening here, but this is from NH Journal. I'll put in the episode description if you want these articles. New Hampshire Executive Council voted 3-2 Wednesday to reject a request to extend the state's contract with the company that operates the vehicle inspection system, despite a federal court order requiring inspections to continue. Thumbs up, Republican Executive Council. Love you guys. During an emergency meeting of the council Wednesday, 3 Republican councilors, Joe Kenny, John Stephen, and Dave Wheeler, expressed outrage over a ruling by U.S. District Court Judge Landia McCafferty ordering New Hampshire to keep its inspection and emissions programs in place. And a quote from Attorney General John Formella, so you're asking us to approve a contract for a program that is not authorized by New Hampshire law, end quote. John Stephen asked that, I'm sorry. And Formella wrote, yes, correct. We have a program that is not authorized under New Hampshire law, but which the state has been ordered to continue by federal court. It creates a complicated legal situation. Want to know a secret? It doesn't. You just don't follow it because odds are the federal government is not going to do anything. Here's the deal with laws. Any laws that don't have an enforcement mechanism, not really laws, they're just suggestions. So if we go ahead and do this, something like 18 other states have already done, whatever. I mean, what are they going to do? They're in theory going to hold back funds. It's a fundamental issue where guess what? New Hampshire will have some, and a lot of the activist types will be in federal court making sure that this doesn't continue. Gordon Darby has an agenda. They're making so much money, and their contract ended. If their contract ended, I don't see how that holds up in federal court that they're taking a loss. I can understand the EPA, the organization that at the federal level that controls the emissions testing and mandates that states comply with it. If they brought it to court, I don't see that happening under the Trump administration, which has been since 2016 trying to get rid of the EPA as a whole, just like the Department of Education. Been tremendous cuts to what they do. That is not going to go very far. So the 60-day suspension is just life support to try and keep it going, to cause confusion. If the federal courts don't come in, if the federal government doesn't come in and specifically say, hey, we're going to do this, here's going to be the effect. I've heard radio silence from the federal government when it comes to this. And they wouldn't have some two-bit contractor that wants to make their millions off of the backs of Granite staters. They lost their contract. It's done. Even if somehow the emissions testings do end up coming back, I think New Hampshire government's going to contract with these guys. They're going to do everything they can. They'll spend 3 times as much to make sure that this company does not receive that contract. So I don't know. I'm not holding up. Democrat Karen Lyon Hill was joined by Republican Janet Stevens in voting in favor of the extension. Following the council's vote, the state now lacks an approved vendor contract to operate the technical side of the inspection program, even as the federal injunction remains in effect. The New Hampshire Department of Justice has announced it will suspend enforcement of inspection violations until April 26, while officials determine how to comply with the court. This ain't going nowhere. I could be very wrong, but my analysis of this is that inspections are done. Can't remember what there was. Even a police department, Hampstead, I want to say it was, even posted on social media saying, "Hey, we've seen what's going on with the confusion around this law. guess what? We ain't pulling you over for a sticker that's the wrong color. So here's the deal with this. There's a lot of misinformation when it comes to it. Police can still pull you over if your car is a danger. If you have a light out, if you have a hood that's flung open, you get a door hanging off, blowing in the breeze, the police have the right to pull you over and fine you or summons you or whatever it is that police do. I'm not a police officer. They have that right to do that. So that never changed. That has nothing to do with inspections. They've had that authority this whole time. Inspections were like in addition to. And because the Automobile Dealers Association and stuff refused to give and negotiate on this, they were just hardline saying, hey, no, we're not getting rid of inspections. This is what you get. You don't get, now, I'm sorry, going back to Hampstead, they're saying that we're not pulling people over, we'll get you for that, this or that, but we're staying outside of this fight. It's something just pay attention to. I guarantee you talk to any law enforcement you know, they're not pulling you over for an old sticker, especially at this point. So many of them especially are going to side with Republicans, if I had to guess. Maybe not the chiefs, but the beat cop, the guy in the cruiser, they're probably going to just say, I really don't care about this. This is not important. I got bigger fish to fry. All right. Let's move on from that and talk about the more craziness at the state level. AOP blames bureaucratic breakdown. Democrats cry cover-up on ICE site. So there's been talk for months that ICE, the Immigration and Customs Enforcement, was going to set up a detainment facility in Merrimack. Been talked about for a while. This is back and forth, and suddenly documents were released by the New Hampshire ACLU show that the Trump administration informed the state of New Hampshire in early January that it was proposing to place an ICE facility in Merrimack. Quote, the letter is provided to initiate consultation on a proposed DHS U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement undertaking subject to Section 106, the National Historic Preservation Act in Merrimack, New Hampshire. And it was ICE is proposing to purchase, occupy, and rehabilitate a 43-acre warehouse property in support of ICE operations. Tentage and a guard shack may also be installed. Obviously, the ACLU of New Hampshire not happy about this. The ACLU is a leftist activist legal organization, and they were all in a tizzy over it. I mean, ultimately, me personally, and most Republicans, they could care less about this facility going in. Some Republicans are like celebrating it. I could care less. We got to house people. I prefer them to maybe be in our backyard as opposed to the swamps of Florida where they'll get flooded. A nice warehouse nearby. Hey, maybe we can have a little bit of control over what's going on with the detainments, because there's been some pretty atrocious stories when it comes to how these detainees are being treated. It is a legitimate issue that is not being addressed, and everyone's just distracted by the chaos in Minnesota. There's other fish to fry here than just Minnesota. All right. But I don't know, this is back and forth, but the biggie, oh boy, the biggie. I will say Michael Graham, once again, at NH Journal, had the best article talking about this analysis. The ICE info fiasco is just Stewart's latest folly, because guess what? So the Department of Natural and Cultural Resources, the DNCR, is the state agency responsible for historic sites. Because this warehouse is like some older facility, they needed to get their approval through the DNCR under Commissioner Stewart, Sarah Stewart. And everyone's, as Graham put here, just once again, scratching their heads and going, why is this woman still working here? Why is she here? So she's decided not to renew, as she's going to step down at the end of her term, which is coming up sooner rather than later. She's a Sununu appointee. She's allegedly was a Republican at some point. I don't entirely understand. So kind of a bigger story of Sarah Crawford Stewart overall outside of that is she is actually married to a political activist type who is quite obnoxious on X. I don't understand why Sarah puts up with it, but maybe it's because she's a political actor doing stuff in the background herself, so she stays out of it and quite enjoys the fact her husband is a psycho online. According to NH Journal, a failed right-wing political operative I found is Christopher P. Stewart at Fresh Buzz. on X. If you want to have some unhinged lefty takes, that's a place you can go. I don't know why you would, but it's there. So they should have informed the governor that this was going on. They never informed the governor's office, allegedly. So left-wing activists around the state are going, of course the governor knew. She's just ignoring the fact that she was told, just trying to sweep it under the rug to let it happen and stay out of it, or if she does care, just stay out of it and not have to deal with it. So it's a bad look for Ayotte, unfortunately, with this going on, because, I mean, there's no evidence to show that she honestly knew this was going on. And by the outrage coming from her office, it was a legitimate issue. So, and what makes it even worse was Sarah Stewart here, old Commissioner Stewart over at the DNCR. This was the release that she put out. This is her quote. Quote, division directors are supposed to notify me of any right-to-know requests or Section 106 requests for a review of any matters potentially significant to the state. I've reminded my team to notify me of requests of this nature, so I'm positioned to review them and alert the governor's office on all sensitive matters, end quote. AKA, my staff screwed up. Sorry. That's what it is. So she blatantly went out there and said, hey, my staff didn't tell me that was going on. I'm so sorry. Can you forgive me that I was derelict in my duties as commissioner to make sure the right-to-know requests were actually being informed to her office, and something huge like this, like a federal agency looking to move into the state with a facility, informed the governor's office, decided not to do that, and no matter what, even if she was informed, she didn't tell the governor's office. So just crap all over her staff. I feel terrible for anyone that works over at the DNCR right now. It's been an utter nightmare working underneath her. There's been so many instances of screw-ups. For example, the Elizabeth Gurley Flynn historic marker that was here in Concord, where the DNCR just blamed Governor Sununu at the time in the city of Concord. You literally have a communist sympathizer historical marker put in because for a little while she worked at the ACLU before it was a blatant left-wing activist organization. Whatever. And then there's another article I found at one point showing all the screw-ups that she did over the span of her career. Oh, here's some more of it. Oh yeah, she was involved with the appointing of a left-wing progressive to be the state librarian, and the commie thing there. Stu was apparently unaware of who in her department was celebrating the fact that Flynn was getting that and was blaming Concord. There's a list. I'll put it in the episode description. You should Michael Graham did a great job writing this piece on her. It's a real issue. All right, let's go over to one more thing for the closing section of this article, of this episode here. The Charlie Act. So we're seeing Charlie Acts pop up all over the country, and in New Hampshire, we have Representative Belcher has brought it up. He's been on my show previously. He's a bit of a character, but he does a lot of really good things too. He's really informed. He's really informed of a lot of the things that are going on when it comes to Marxism, going in education and things of that nature, and critical theory. So HB 1792 for 2026 is right under the Committee of Education Policy Administration, and an act prohibiting school districts and personnel from the instruction of critical race theory and LGBTQ plus ideologies in schools, as well as establishing private right of action for violations. So not only is it saying, hey, please don't do that, Department of Ed, it's your job to make something happen, which is kind of the issue with the divisive concepts law from a few years ago. This is outright outlining, hey, these are the things we got problems with and we want to change. And oh boy, are people upset about that. They are not a fan of that. I got into it on Facebook in the comments because I'm a problem and I can't help myself. I decided to go in the comments. And for example, this one person, I'm not going to say names, it's an issue because this is an educator, but this is why we need these laws to go into effect, in my opinion. This person, or LGBTQ ally here, aggrieved by the discrimination of this bill, I oppose HB 1792 as I interpret it as censorship of my own New Hampshire students' lived experiences. And my response was, they can live their life, but teachers shouldn't put it in the classroom. I'm constantly hearing how youth for 3 generations are missing life skills and basic academic skills. Maybe focus on that instead of critical theory. And I want to specify there, critical theory. Google description here is a broad framework of social and political thought that analyzes and critiques society to challenge power structures, ideology, and forms of domination, aiming for human emancipation and social transformation, not just description. Critical theory is not critical thinking. This is something that's constantly conflated, just like equity and equality. Those are very different things. If you're hearing about critical theory analysis, it is not what most people expect it to be. This person wrote, well, now you're getting feedback from the, what is it? And this person told, sorry, she removed her comments. Sure, so she either blocked me or removed her comments. She went in and replied saying that she had an interaction with a small child at the school she works at. The kid was asking, can 2 men get married? Boys or men, I can't remember. And she went, you should talk to she was flustered apparently, she said, and said, well, you should talk to your parents about that. That's an at-home conversation to have. And I wrote, that's right, that's exactly what you're supposed to write. And I'm like, that's perfect. And she's like, well, we're ignoring the lived experiences. We got to stop it with this lived experience nonsense, okay? There's a certain standard that public education needs to have where it's focused on teaching the essential skills to live and to have critical thinking. Once again, critical thinking, not critical theory, so they learn how to exist in the world. If we're constantly focused, there's so much focus on these soft social emotional learning skills that we're ignoring the needs. And we're constantly hearing how American kids are being left behind by our education system. It's constantly thrown out that it's because of the funding. We need to dump more money on the problem, just like every other Democrat solutions. We need to dump money on the problem because that's going to fix it. Or we need to let our activists in the classroom determine what's best. No. Teachers are public employees. They work for the taxpayer. It's their job to educate as they see fit. If they don't like that, there's charter schools, there's private schools. New Hampshire is quickly evolving into a laboratory of education, which I am hugely excited to see. There's your place to be. Public schools are mandated by government to exist. There's huge issues with how they deal with discipline and keeping kids in the classroom that shouldn't be in the classroom and should flunk out. Maybe should be isolating those kids in a separate way of being taught. But you as a teacher are at the mercy of the voter. Sorry. That's the nature of your job. You need to be prepared to deal with that. And so many of these teachers and the NEA and such, they need to be reined in by the Charlie Act, in my opinion. HB 1792, 2026. Show your support, Representative Belcher, and it's even signed on by Majority Leader Representative Osborne, which is great to see. So even leadership in the Republican Party is saying, hey, here's something we need to look at. We need to make sure Marxism, critical theory, and a focus on sexual and personal identification should not be the priority of the education that we give our kids. It also should not be the fear of God of the climate ending. It also shouldn't be making sure kids are aware of the ICE situation, as we saw kids in Manchester and Nashua do walkouts of school. This is all wrong. School is not the place for activism. In my opinion, parents are doing the wrong thing by also indoctrinating their kids with all this stuff too, but that's for them. School is for school. We need to get back to that. It's the reason why I put my kid in a different school and removed him from the public school, because I was seeing a bunch of this nonsense in addition to some other issues going on. We need to teach our kids to be able to survive and succeed, and doing this nonsense we've seen so many examples of is not how we do it. All right, this is New England Take, newenglandtake.com. I'm your host, AJ Kiersid. Please be sure to go to that site and subscribe. Put your email in there. You'll just get hit up with every episode every week, as well as the New England News Roundup I do here at WKXL also. Big thank you to them for picking up the show Saturdays, 8:30 a.m. Next up over there is Facing the Future. And thank you to thegranitegrok.com and Concord TV for also picking up the show. We'll talk to you soon.